All right, so really quick, we just want to push through this one section of American society during the 1950s, okay? When we think about the 1950s, or when most folks think about the 1950s, okay, they've got this vision, okay, this vision of an old TV show called Happy Days, where everybody is very, happy and everything is going really cool, and mom works at home and dad goes out to work every day, okay? There's a show before this called Ozzie and Harriet, and it was your idealized family with 2 kids and a working dad and mom at home making sure dinner is ready and all that stuff, okay? That is the idealized version of American society during this time period. And for a lot of folks, it truly was the case, okay? We are coming out of a period again, we're coming out of World War II. The war in Korea is ending, all right? And America is going to reach or hit a point of serious economic and industrial growth, okay? And this is going to trickle down to put a lot of money in a lot of people's pockets, okay? And have an impact and a change on our overall society, okay? And so today we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of these things that was going on in the early part of the 1950s. So as I said, we're at a post-war American period, okay? New businesses, new technologies, new business practices, okay, are going to allow this country to produce a lot of new goods and accrue a lot of new wealth. And where a lot of this wealth is going to go is to purchasing consumer goods, houses, cars, okay? And as we learned with the 1920s, the more folks are consuming certain goods, okay, the more that general industry grows. This period of economic growth, in fact, is going to be very, very similar to the economic growth of the 1920s. A couple of things that we think about when we think about the 1950s or talk about the 1950s. One is the baby boom, okay? The baby boom. We hear it today that the boomers are all getting older, okay? Baby boom are those kids that were born between 47 rather, through 1964. That's the baby boom, okay? You've got all of these soldiers who are coming home from World War II, frustrated, out there at the battlefields. They get married. What's the first thing they want to try and do? You got it, okay? And with that comes babies. Boom, all right? 2, 3, 4 babies and all that stuff. Exactly. I love it. Folks who are also coming home, they don't want to live in their traditional housing that they had lived in before. They are all coming out of these tenement houses in the cities. Everybody's close together, okay? And we're going to have a change of philosophy. Folks are going to want to get away from the cities, Joe Wheeler, and they're going to want to move into areas where they've got lawns and pretty houses, all right? And this whole area is going to be this whole movement or this type of area that's no longer inside the city, okay? It's going to be known as suburbia or the suburbs, okay? We're moving out of the cities into these nice manicured lawn houses, and there's going to be an individual, a developer, who's going to push this concept, okay? A developer by the last name of Levitt. And he is going to buy tracts of land, and people are going to model or copy his model, but buy tracts of land and put up houses right next to each other that are all the same, okay? He is going to use the same technology or the same methodology that they used to build the Liberty ships during the 1940s, during the Second World War, okay? Or automobiles. This assembly line process to be able to put up these houses in quick order, okay? And you were able to buy these houses because you came back from the Second World War and you got some money from the government, your GI Bill money. And that money is going to encourage you to do a couple of things, okay? That money is going to be used to encourage you to buy a house, go to school, okay, or start a business. And a lot of folks, as you'll see, are going to want to buy some of these Levitt houses. So, as opposed to keep talking about it, I'll show you a really quick clip of what these Levitt houses were like and the philosophy of putting them together.
5 years ago, this was a vast checkerboard of potato farms on New York and
A family could move into this house in very, very short order, okay? So you've got a lot of folks relocating from the cities, moving into these Levittown communities, okay, these suburban communities where everything is the same, okay? And we're getting this sort of idea of what we're supposed to be doing, okay? I'm living in this house, and Joan and the Smiths next door, they've got a white picket fence. Well, we need to have a white picket fence also. Steve is over there and he's got a really nice lawn. He's got the nicest lawnmower. Maybe I need to get the nicest lawnmower too. And so we're creating this kind of idealistic vision of of how people should live. And you all know that in reality, okay, that doesn't occur. Yeah, they may look pretty on the outside. Think about the Gilded Age. Everything looks pretty on the outside, okay? But once you peel back a layer, see what's going on behind closed doors, you realize that Steve's an alcoholic, okay? Or that the mom has got some other problems going on. Right? The kid's got behavioral issues. They look ideal on the outside, but the reality is things aren't always the same. Yet we are going to keep pushing this idea. Your responsibility as a female during this time period was to be a good housemaker, okay? As a man, you're supposed to go out and get a job, bring home the bacon, and raise that family. Everything is supposed to be pretty in suburbia, okay? In suburbia. We will see a backlash against suburbia during the 1960s and 70s, and we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. So what's going on in the workplace during this time? Well, in the 1950s, we are going to see a change in overall working, okay? Not just in manufacture. We still will have manufacturing going on, auto industry, steel industry, okay? But for the first time, we are going to see more white-collar jobs. Right? Those folks that are managers, supervisors, engineers, designers, architects, you name it, okay? The type of jobs where you need a college degree, okay? Where you go to work wearing a white shirt and a tie, a nice button-down and a tie, okay? We'll see more of those in the workplace than at any other time in American history. Okay, so we are moving from still manufacturing, okay, but we're also becoming kind of an ideal, a design country as well. We're also going to see the emergence of franchises during this time. We all know the Golden Arches, okay, one of the first franchises in the country. And this is going to be for several reasons, actually. Several reasons we're going to have this. Reason one, we're going to see the expanding of the interstate system. So now we can get from Philadelphia all the way out to Harrisburg or Pittsburgh really quick, fast, no big deal, okay? But I want to eat something along the way, and I want to go someplace that I know that is going to be just like the hamburger joint that I have next door, okay? Answering that call is McDonald's. I can get the McDonald's in my neighborhood, go to the McDonald's over on the other side of the country, and guess what? It's going to be the exact same, okay? And franchises of all sorts are going to pop up. Burger King, Bob's Big Boy, Dunkin' Donuts, you name it, okay? Just about any franchise that you can think about today existed or got their roots back in the 1950s and the 1960s. Entertainment is going to change during this time period, okay? We are going to see the advent of the television into the American home. People are going to be able to get their entertainment without leaving their front door. Not only will they have their good old radio entertainment, but they'll also be able to watch the soap operas. They'll be able to watch sports events. You name it, they can have it there. As a result, movies are going to start changing things up. They're going to see a drop in attendance, okay? And so what they're going to do is come up with some new ideas, newfangled ways to get people involved, okay? We're going to have 3D, okay? 3D movies, all right? Things in CinemaScope, these big, broad pictures and these great big blockbusters. That's what they're going to try and do to offset the loss of audiences to the television. Pretty much the same thing that they're doing now to try and offset the loss of people going to the movies through watching streaming services. One of the big things that's going to come out during this time period that's going to be a big cultural changer, more so than the movies, more so than the radio, okay, more so even than the automobile, is the advent of rock and roll. Rock and roll is going to change the way folks see music, okay? They're going to change the way different groups interact with each other. Rock and roll has its origins in the South, okay? It was called colored music back then. Colored music, colored people's music, all right? That's that music. After a while, folks are going to see it for what it is. Yes, ma'am.
Could you give this to Deb and then Sean?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Folks will see it, or the young folks will see it. They'll be excited by the whole concept of it, okay? And once that starts happening, you got their parents that are like, oh no, you won't be playing that music in my house, but it was already too late. The cat had been let out of the bag, and folks like Little Richard were leading the way. We are going to see some folks that are embracing rock and roll heavily, okay, then some folks that are not so fond of it. And it will cause some contention throughout society, okay? I'll show you guys this clip a little bit later on. Or I may give it to you as a separate assignment, talking about building the American dream. It's a documentary that really does a good job at explaining what was happening during this time period. It hits a lot of our key points. Music, the Red Scare, suburbia, all that stuff, but the speakers here aren't working so well today for whatever reason, so I'm going to bypass that and probably give it to you as a side assignment. All right, so we've got this idealized version of what things are supposed to be like. But with every ideal version, there's always another side. There's always a less idealized side of American society. And during this time period, the 1950s, okay, we're going to have great prosperity in this country, a lot of growth for a lot of folks, okay? But we are going to still have over 30 million individuals in this country living below the poverty level. These numbers are similar to those during the Great Depression. Now, during the Great Depression, of course, folks were out of work, 30 million people out of work. Here we've got work, maybe, sort of, okay? But we are well below the poverty level. We are not making as much as we need in order to survive. And it's not just going to be blacks that are suffering from this. This is going to be an equal opportunity negative impact. Of course, we're going to see it first off in the inner cities, because all those GIs that were coming home from the war with their GI Bill money, moving out to the Levittowns and buying these houses, they're all going to take off. And the folks that are going to be left behind are those folks that don't have the means, don't have the resources to move out and buy that Levittown house. All right? They're going to be of a lower socioeconomic bracket, essentially. And as more and more folks of means move out of the city, okay, the folks that are left, okay, are going to have less and less and fewer resources within the city. Okay? The folks that are leaving are taking that tax money and they're putting it into those Levittown areas, not buying goods or paying taxes that help support schools, that help support transportation and whatnot in the cities. So we're going to see an overall decline in the social health of cities throughout the country. Okay? That's the urban side of things. The government is going to want to step in, and they're going to say, hey, we've got this plan. We see things are going kind of a little bit crazy here. We've got a plan. It's called urban renewal. And what we are going to do is we're going to tear down some of these old neighborhoods. Who wants to live in these old broken down houses or these old broken down tenement buildings? We're going to tear those down, and we are going to build new shiny high-rises, okay, new shiny neighborhoods. These neighborhoods came to be known, okay, as housing projects. We're going to redo everything, make it all pretty. What they failed to realize that they were doing is that they were destroying well-established neighborhoods. They were destroying green space that had existed. They maybe used some of that territory that one time has been a neighborhood. Okay, well, we're going to move everybody out of this area to another area, and we're going to put a highway through this section of town. So they're going to divide communities. And what you're doing is you're taking people that maybe are spread out a little bit, okay, and now they're living all on top of each other in a nice 14-story high-rise. You're condensing issues of poverty into one area. You're condensing issues of crime into one area. And this is a factor, okay, an experiment that we are still, yay, reaping the benefits of today. We still have problems with these areas, okay, as a result of philosophies that happened during the 1950s. Those blacks that were able to move out of the urban areas during this time period faced other discriminations. Okay? It wasn't so much even an economic issue, it was a race issue. Housing, okay, they're going to face discrimination in housing. There'll be whole neighborhoods, Levittowns in particular, okay, where blacks weren't allowed. Yes, you were a soldier. Yes, you fought in the Second World War. Okay, yes, you've got the GI Bill. You want to buy a house? Fantastic. That's great. We love it for you, Mr. Johnson. Unfortunately, you can't buy it in Levittown. It's not going to be until the 1970s that the first blacks started moving into Levittown, over 20 years after their advent. Okay? Whole neighborhoods are going to be what's known as being redlined, meaning that if you had just about enough resources to buy a house, okay, and you want to try and buy in an area, the bank would say, oh, wait a second, that area, that's in this red zone. We won't give you a loan to buy a house in that area. And you can't buy a house in Levittown, so you might as well just go back to the inner city and stay there. Okay? Those are going to be some of the issues that are prevalent during this time for African Americans. And even today, if you listen to certain news stories, you will hear the legacy of this continues on even to this very day. But like I said, it's not just African Americans that are suffering from the situation. Hispanics, again, are getting the short end of the stick. Come on up, we want you to work in the barrio programs. We want you to help us with our agricultural issues. Okay? Yeah, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. All right? And this time, as opposed to saying, all right, now go home, you can stay, but your conditions are going to be really, really harsh. Okay? You're going to get underpaid. Go ahead and complain about the amount of money that you're getting. We dare you. We challenge you. Okay? You have to find someplace else to work. You're working long, hard hours for very little money with no real voice. Okay? It won't be until the 1970s with Cesar Chavez that we actually start to see farm workers uniting. Your housing, okay, is going to be just as bad as anything else that's on the market, okay, in terms of what African Americans were going through, in terms of what inner city conditions were like. So we've got another group that's really going to start suffering during this time period, or that's facing a disparity, okay, between the well-known prosperity of the 1950s. Again, equal opportunity. Poor whites living in Appalachia, okay, in the rural South, those areas are going to be just as bad off, if not in some cases worse than those folks in the urban areas. Okay? For every 1,000 people, let's say, in Appalachia, there may be one doctor. So you might have one doctor serving an entire town of, let's say, Lexington. Or one doctor for the entire town of High Point. All right? Or maybe two doctors for High Point. That's the kind of numbers that we're looking at during this time period. Schools are going to be just as bad, if not worse, because no employment, okay, no money coming in, no tax base to pay for these schools. And folks are going to continue to suffer in these areas. And this won't change up a little bit until the 1960s with President Johnson and his Great Society efforts. And then my favorite group, the Native Americans, who have been getting the shaft in this country since, the beginning, okay, are going to find themselves, the government's going to say, hey, come off the reservations, come off the reservations. And we've got a great place for you all to stay. We've got a great place for you all to go. We're going to take you off the reservations and we are going to put you in these great new high-rises. Yeah, come on into the cities. There's no jobs here. There's no land here for you to go out and do your, practice your own cultural things, okay? Your cultural beliefs. But come on off the reservations. 1% of the population, the Native Americans are made up, okay? And they were the poorest economic group in the entire country. Again, all of this goes back to our policies dating back to, again, day one of this country. So those are just some things to think about as you kind of focus in or reflect on the 1950s, if you ever decide to do that, outside of my assignment, okay? When you hear folks talking about the good old days, oh yeah, it was the good old days. Oh, I remember the 1950s, all right? In some ways, it was the good old days. My dad will still talk fondly of 1950s. He graduated high school, I think, in 1952 or 1953, okay? He had great stories to tell about it. He was middle class living in New Jersey, okay, working class living in New Jersey. Went into the Air Force. But there are a lot of other folks who were overlooked by things in society, okay? And the 1950s or the good old days weren't necessarily the good old days. Just something to think about. All right. You guys got a couple assignments up on Canvas today. One is a reflecting piece about the 1950s. The other big thing for you guys to work on is that portfolio piece. I'll be around to help you guys out if you need.